Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And today is Friday, another Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. My guest on the show today is Ross from Planet X Filmworks. Now, that's how I know him, but Ross, of course, works with a lot of other things. As I understand, you also work with music, and you also have a graphic novel out, right?
Yes, correct. And,
And
people can check those out, Bandcamp, Planet X Records, and the graph novels on Amazon, of course.
okay, what's the name of your graphic novel?
It is The Dark Rift Volume 1, Escape from Earth. Go check that out if that's your thing.
Yes, I have read that one. And will there be a Volume 2 coming soon?
That's the question we always get. We kind of have it storyboarded, if you will, but all that thing takes a very, very long time. But yeah, I think there's enough interest that we'd like to do it, make it a little more violent. Oops.
No, why not, though? But yes, today we're going to be discussing several different subjects. We're going to begin with the Zodiac Killer, but Ross also follows the D.B. Cooper case very closely, and any subject will mostly be fair game for an Anything Goes Friday segment. And you guys can put some ideas in the comment section down below. Are there any guests that you would like to have on the program? And also, what type of true crime stories do you like hearing about? And if you'd like to support any of these efforts, you can go through some of the links in the description box. One of them is for buymeacoffee.com, buymeacoffee.com/blackboxned88. Link for that is down below. And that allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. Now, Ross, over to you. What first made you curious about the Zodiac Killer case?
Yeah, so like I always like to say, I'm not like well, before this, I wasn't the true crime guy, the way Ned and Drew are. These guys know every case. They know every missing person. Like, I'm not that deep. And even serial killers, I was, like kind of leaning in that direction, right? So I kind of got into Jack the Ripper. I was always looking. I know Ned's been doing his Jack series. I, got stuck on that for a while. And I'm always like, like, who is Jack? Like, are any of these suspects good? Going down that rabbit hole, right? And eventually, like, just through general that sort of avenue of Jack the Ripper, general serial killer research, I found, like, Zodiac. And then I just kept coming back to it. Like, I watched the movie, right? And he dumps you on Arthur Lee Allen. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, convincing, and if you don't know the case at all, I think this is how we all felt when we got red pilled. We're like, okay, convincing. The movie says it's that guy. It's got to be that guy. It's the movie, right? That was not knowing anything about Gray Smith or the book. And then I just found myself on Tom's forum and then all the threads about like how many different suspects there were and how like absolutely nobody thought it was ALA. That was always like baffling to me. You know what I mean? It's like the guy, kind of like what Drew says, the guy who's like essentially the face of the case, or the face of suspects rather, and then like a majority of us highly likely don't think it's him at this point, so it's that kind of conundrum. I guess that's what got me.
Okay, but as I understand with the Zodiac Killer case, because you're based in California, you've had the opportunity to visit a lot of the Southern California sites that are connected to possible cases of Zodiac activity. And on your channel, you've done some very, very big exposés on the possible Zodiac murders that took place in Southern California. And I say possible with emphasis because they're still listed as unconfirmed. But would you like to walk us through some of those? We can even begin in 1962 with the possible Zodiac crime, the murder of Ray Davis.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like, I'm sure where we're going to end up is what we were talking about, Ned and myself, before we came on air, which is the Gaviota Lake Berryessa parallels. But I think Ray Davis is a super solid one. This is actually my episode 2. It occurred in Oceanside. As Ned just said, this was 62. My original intention for the series was to go in chronological order because I thought that's what made the most sense. I also have to bring my film crew down to those locations, and depending on where they are and how annoying they are, we all have to travel together to go shoot the episode. So we actually started with Ocean Beach, which is the Swindles. But Ray Davis 62, Oceanside's a little bit north of us. That would be the first one chronologically, as Ned was just saying. So I don't even know why people are even on the fence on this one. There's just a lot. I don't know. I mean, I guess it would have to be that the Zodiac was copycatting these earlier Southern California murders. That would be the only other explanation. But I just don't know why he would be copying a random person or I don't know. Honestly, to be 100% real with you, and Ned has done in-depth deep dives on the psychology of the Zodiac and the suspects. I don't know if Zodiac's ego would allow him to copy someone that closely. I'm not sure. I think with how highly he rates himself, I don't really see him copying another person. He'll do little bits of Jack the Ripper, and he'll do some Texarkana Phantom. For sure, he will do those without a doubt. But as far as like copying detail to detail, what sense would that make? That when people bring up that argument, it almost makes no sense to me, unless he was somehow copycatting, which I still don't really see as a plausible explanation. But to get back to the question, this Ray Davis, it's a damn near parallel of what happens to Paul Stein, which is the last canonical. So in my opinion, that's Alpha and Omega. It's Zodiac with another one of his obnoxious patterns, like throwing a hint at you. The reason he went downtown in San Francisco, of course, there's all sorts of reasons for it, to target Tashi and the SFPD and all that stuff. But it's also a callback to how he got started, which is 62. If that is the first one, at least it's the most prominent first one that we know of, as Ned was saying.
Okay, then. So when I did the episode, How Many People Did the Zodiac Murder, I listed the probability in my own mind of how likely I thought some of these unconfirmed events were committed by the Zodiac killer. And I gave the Ray Davis shooting a 70%, like 7 out of 10 or 70% likelihood of being the Zodiac. Would you say that you're a 100% on completely, absolutely, this was the Zodiac, no doubt about it? Or
after we did the episode, I believe I was 85. I have to reconvene with Brian, but it's because we went down to the site with Christy, and she knows so much about ocean. She's an oceanside historian, so it's like that. Ray Davis is probably a relatively like small thing that she's done, albeit the most notable and the biggest for us because she's been on the news with Tom and whatever. But so we actually got a lot more information out of Christy, right? But not all of it lands on cameras. Like planes fly by, as Ned knows, ruins your audio. So every take is not a perfect take. In a perfect world, yeah, you'd have no background noise. Take a look at episode 1 to see how background noise goes when you're shooting right next to the Pacific Ocean. But she was talking about the train. I'm sure, Ned, you've seen on Tom's forum, people have brought up the train discussion. And I don't know. I think there could be something to it. Like it's maybe not the most forefront thing, but there certainly could be something to it because those train tracks are right there next to that address. And she was even saying, like, if the killer waits for the train to go by, covering up the sound once again, like how he did at Blue Rock Springs with the fireworks, that is like a very Zodiac. Now, I know people don't want to call him a master criminal, and no, he's not a genius, but he did certain things that got him away out of these situations that were in semi-urban areas. So like if he's waiting for the train at Ray Davis and then he's doing the fireworks at Blue Rock Straight again, you could establish another pattern there. I mean, I don't know what the other ones would be, but
So it sounds like there are a couple different elements with the train theory that have been discussed, and you're bringing up the one about how the train going on the tracks would make lots of noise. But even the case breakers, and Dale Julin talked about their theory involving Ray Davis. They believe that their Zodiac suspect, Gary Francis Post, committed the murder of Ray Davis in 62, and then used the train not only to cover the noise, but also as his getaway and exit. And of course, we don't have to endorse the case breakers on every single step, but do you think that that's what happened, or do you have a different theory on how the killer operated in the Davis crime?
I surprisingly like that theory, given what I actually think of the case breakers overall and how low and just terrible suspect Gary Francis Post is. I certainly could see that happening, albeit I don't think it would have been Post. But if they could ever glue that together and show something that could actually back that up, I'd be interested. It's plausible. It's certainly plausible, but also it's oceanside and it's right near what's stopping him from jumping a boat if people say that he has all of this Navy and or Air Force experience. So you could kind of go any direction with that one. He took a canoe out, a rowboat, it doesn't really matter, you know what I mean? But I like the train thing only because it's going to come up again in 63 at Gaviota. There's a train right there too. So it does make you start to question things,
Okay, though, but I said that I gave it 70% likelihood being the Zodiac, and you said 85%. My own concerns, and the reasons why I have it as a little bit lower likelihood of Zodiac involvement, would be that, firstly, the killer of Ray Davis allegedly made phone calls before and after the crime. The phone call said something to the effect of, "I'm going to pull something real nasty in Oceanside and you're never going to figure it out." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, paraphrasing, but that's the general idea. The
Mm-hmm.
Zodiac did not make phone calls to announce his crimes. He would call afterward and say, "I shot 2 kids in a car, and
Mm-hmm.
go 1 mile east on the Columbus Parkway and you'll find the bodies." And I mean, that isn't even my own observation. This is another thing that people have shared in other discussions. But what do you think about that? Does that not suggest a different killer?
No, it doesn't suggest a different killer. He makes all these mistakes in the non-canonicals, and he is super sloppy at times. Just wait till I get to Gaviota. I'd hate to, that's my new episode, so that's what I'm stuck on. But I think it's perfectly plausible that, he even carries the mistake over into Lake Herman Road, if you want to be real. And then, man, I don't know. I got to send you my man Dion's essay of his one killer theory, because he points out some amazing things in that. And he actually almost makes mistakes at all of them, to be real with you. Lake Herman Road, she almost runs away. He leaves a survivor at Blue Rock Springs. He leaves a survivor at Lake Berryessa. He targets a taxi driver again, because that's the only person you can totally control their movement. They're going where you tell them to. So, you know what I mean? It was a safe bet on that one. But the phone calls, it doesn't really matter. He's just experimenting with things. He doesn't get the result that he wants in Oceanside, even though it causes a similar effect of what happened with the bus bomb threat when they started having the police escorts for the buses and stuff. The MPs do a similar thing at Camp Pendleton in Oceanside. So it almost has the same effect on a smaller scale, smaller city, smaller community. But he's trying out different things. He's trying threats before and after. It doesn't mean anything. He doesn't even write any letters in the non-canonicals unless you get Cherry Joe Bates, which you've seen my episode. I leaned closer and closer to, like, I don't think that's Zodiac, other than maybe doing the letters, but it would have been unlikely for him to go in the library and kill her. So.
Okay, I can tell you want to talk about the next event that we're going through, and that would be the Domingos-Edwards murders from 1963. Would you like to give us an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I don't even know why people are on the fence on this one, because it's not just the most Zodiac non-canonical crime. It's the most Zodiac, even including the canonical crimes. It's literally more, Zodiac than those, in far as what transpired and all the references to everything. So essentially, Robert Dominguez and Linda Edwards, is it June 3rd or 4th, 1963? And so it happens on their senior skip day. And I actually just listened to Ned's old episode, so I'm fully keyed in. And they make a big deal about it being senior skip day because nobody knew where they were going. Once again, like the Lake Berryessa situation, they didn't tell anyone where they were going. They were actually planning on going to a different location, to Goleta Beach, with their friends. They end up not doing that and going down to this location by themselves. And we call it Gaviota Beach. It's actually, a peninsula further south that used to be a more prominent beach in the 60s. Now it's just like essentially a pile of rocks. But it's this weird, grimy slope with these paths that go down there. There's this shack in the woods where their bodies are found. Robert's body is all bruised up. There's crazy things. I don't know if do you want me to go into the crime scene, or do you want me to just set up the events before it?
Well, I think we need to set up the events beforehand. And also, you said, why would somebody be on the fence about this? Now, out of all the unconfirmed Zodiac crimes anywhere in the world, I also say that the Domingos-Edwards murders is the highest on the list. And I gave it an 80%. I mean, I think I actually said 79, but let's say 80% likelihood that's the highest out of all of them.
Yeah.
And because of the similarities between the Gaviota shooting and the Lake Berryessa stabbing, which would happen in 1969. And now, I mean, I can talk to you about all of my skeptical reasons, but I think you have some additional introductory elements you'd like to share with us.
Yeah. So they're going down there for sunbathing. It's actually 3 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. So this is daylight, like Lake Berryessa. And then they just get caught. They get ambushed by the killer. There's that weird shack. It has ammunition boxes around it. Actually, if we want to get technical, so there's reports of sniper shootings previous. Some surfer dudes are down there, and they said that the shots came so close to them they could hear bullets like whistling by their head. So that's some menacing, weird, crazy stuff right there. There's also the beachcomber dude, George Gill, who is the homeless dude that lives down there that built the shack, We'll come to him later. Later on, they question him. He admits to building the shack, but that's all that he admits to, has an alibi, blah, blah, blah. Robert and Linda are ambushed. They're shot like over 20 times. All the shells are found right there in the creek bed. It is 22 long ammunition. We'll come to the brand later, but another similarity to Lake Herman Road, although people say it was just the most popular brand at the time. I don't know. I find it compelling. I think it's the most intense of all the non-canonicals because there's two victims, even though the Swindles were 19 and 20. These are two high school sweethearts. They're even younger. Like, it was almost Linda's birthday. They were just about to graduate. Robert was an all-American football player. He was a rancher, a farmer, like big jack dude. Sure to be a successful guy, and just I don't know. It's just crazy. It's like when you say cold case, it is cold as ice, man. Like they looked into everything, much like Riverside and even the Swindles, which they compared ballistics to for this, which is 64. That the next one we'll get to. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's very like crazy that community is so small, and they look into all these different suspects and stuff, and basically nothing ever comes up. And I think that's because after the Zodiac activity in Northern California during the canonicals, they end up drawing that parallel, and then we'll come to that in the aftermath,
Okay, then. Some of my genuine skeptical reasons about why I would doubt this being the Zodiac killer would be, number one, Linda Edwards had her swimsuit cut. It's kind of cut down the middle, and then it's opened, and it reveals her breasts. That is something that we never see in any of the Zodiac crimes. Now, what was that done for? We don't know. Because
exactly.
No witnesses. I don't know why, but that's just something that's different. Number two, the Zodiac, we're not with the Zodiac yet. The perpetrator of the Domingos-Edwards murders
Got him.
moved the bodies of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, dragging them to this seaside shack, then attempted to set the seaside shack on fire. Now, the Zodiac very rarely touched a dead body. The Zodiac moves Paul Stein's body in the taxi cab on October 11th, but Cecilia Shepard was stabbed multiple times. He didn't drag her body anywhere. Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferret, all these women are incapacitated. Some of them are dead. And the Zodiac just didn't do that. And what is your response to that?
Well, he also moves Ray Davis's body. He grabs him by the belt and dumps him in the alleyway. You know what I mean?
That's a confirmed crime.
Sure. So he touched, in my theory, right? My opinion, he touched both the taxi drivers. Again, it's a situation of, well, I mean, you want me to? Do you want the long answer or the short answer? Because I
got time. Go for it. Whatever feels good to you.
Okay, so he touches the bodies there. He totally lost control of that situation. So when he ambushed him, like Ned said, her top got cut, but we don't know why. We don't know if that was part of a struggle. So I'm just gonna back into what my theory is. It's essentially like the Lake Berryessa dry run, where he's going for that Lake Berryessa fantasy. He reenacts that executioner's mask and all that stuff. I mean, like Ned said, no witnesses, so we don't know if he had the mask on. In my opinion, it might have been more of a Texarkana style hood, like a bag hood. I don't see him going bareface in daylight, although I've been down that hill, Ned, and you're not going to see anybody down there. It's super secluded. It's a hike down that trail. Me and my whole crew went down there, and it's when we say isolated, even if you just look that beach is further up, but it's I think almost 3 miles up. So you got enough room to do whatever you want, right? So whatever happened with the knife and cutting the suit, I think he was either going to do something, and I'm speculating, so don't go try to find resources on this, guys. I think he was either going to do something to Linda, or he said he was going to do something to Linda and taunted Bobby. Maybe not even actually planning to, but just messing with him, just trying to torture him. You know what I mean? So it does get cut. Yes, she turns her back and runs. She gets shot in the back up the creek. Bobby, he's found with all these bruises on his body. People have tried to say that he broke up a fight at school, but I don't know if it would have been as bruised as that, you know what I'm saying? But anything's possible. But I don't know. It's like kids were a lot more reasonable back then. I don't know how crazy that fight got, you know, in my opinion. So he obviously got into some kind of struggle, and I have evidence for that too that I'll provide you with later. I also think that that's the reason Zodiac would never claim this one, because he would never admit to anybody that he totally lost control, likely got injured, likely fled the scene so fast that the fire. So about the fire, some people say that's unconfirmed, that the tarp was tried to like lit on fire, but they did find those spent matches. So it's more likely that they were just flicked real fast. You know, maybe the tarp just barely caught, but by the time the assailant left, the wind just like blew it out or whatever, like Ned was saying. But yeah, so the bodies are dragged, I think it's 25 to 30 feet or whatever, or yards. So it's a fair distance, but yeah, I mean, I think the only way to explain that is he was going for the funeral pyre thing. So he grabbed him. He was trying to do this massive, epic, by gun, by knife, by rope, by fire, you know, fantasy. Never achieves it, not until Lake Berryessa, but did try to light that shack on fire, but also had a reason for leaving super quickly. Injury sustained in his fight with Robert. You know what I mean?
Well, Ross, I think I know your answer to this next question, but there is a very widely discussed suspect in the Domingos-Edwards murders, and we only know him by the name of Sandy.
Yeah.
Now, Sandy is someone who also allegedly committed the murder of Vern Smith the day before, which is about 36 hours beforehand. Do you think that Sandy, this murderer who was in the area, was responsible for the Domingos-Edwards murders? Why not?
So Zodiac Files episode 4 coming soon. We're editing it now. I go in depth, on site, on location at both Gaviota 63, Domingos-Edwards, and Vern Charles Smith, both locations. So it's kind of a double case episode, if you will. You guys, I'm going to have a big reveal on Sandy. You guys are going to find out a lot more about Sandy. Let's just say I think a suspect that people have made such a big deal about on the internet, I think is going to be probably no longer in the conversation after this. Sandy is like 150 or 60 pounds. Robert Domingo would have slapped his face into outer space. Robert Domingos would have just, even if the kid had a rifle, I don't even, you know, maybe if he shot Robert once, he probably would have still got knocked out if he got punched in his face, to be honest with you. Sandy was tiny. You know what I mean? He was expected to be like age 16 or 17. Robert was an All-American football player. I think he would have mopped the floor with him. I don't even think so. I mean, I get it, because they say the whole J.C. Reed Coleman killing spree. Okay, so let's go into like what do we know about Sandy? He's definitely a real person. He was definitely seen at the motel. He was seen by the girls who he left the camo jacket in their car. Had the name, I think, Robert Kaufman. He used a couple aliases, although he said he stole that from Army Navy, so that could have just been like some soldier's name that got written on fatigues. We don't know, you know. So people make a big deal about those aliases. I don't know. We'll figure it out in episode 4. But you know what I mean? All these people saw him, right? So, including it was, I don't remember if it was Reed or Coleman's mom who worked at the restaurant where they encountered Vern and they planned to rob him. So, up until then, he's definitely seen. But the only problem is, like Ned was saying, after that, we're kind of going by Reed and Coleman's like story, their version of the story, like, you know. And as Ned knows true crime. You guys know that's why you're on Black Box Radio, right? So when two guys, when the cops throw the book at two guys for murder, and they were like definitely confirmed there, and they say, and these kids were, I think, Matt, I think 17 and 19, or even younger than that, 16 and 17, and they're like, well, yeah, but it wasn't us. It was the third guy who was with us that stabbed him to death, and that, you know what I mean? So Sandy gets tried as a John Doe in the paperwork. You guys can read the whole deposition and see what they said happened, and then they bring up all these witnesses and all that stuff. Even the doctors, the whole autopsy thing, it's all in that report. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna like speculate right here real quick, but we have no idea if they just took Sandy and dropped him off. Like, you know, it's unlikely, but yeah, that's their version of the story, that Sandy stabbed that guy in the back. Now, what do they have for evidence though? They have that knife. They have, I think, the wallet. They have the Sunbeam that they stole because they were riding around the Sunbeam convertible that they stole. They have all that stuff, and I even think they found some of the clothes. I don't know if those were Sandy's clothes or the other. So they have a whole bunch of stuff related to the case. Is my point. And only those guys got the book thrown at them for murder. So they both did hard time for that. So I don't know. I mean, it would be like saying, do you think it's Reed and Coleman? How come their names don't get brought up because they got caught or whatever, all that stuff? But how come their names don't get brought up? Well, I guess they had the alibis of where they were afterwards with some receipts and stuff. So I guess, and Sandy's more of an unknown. But even still, what is our link to Sandy with the rifle that we know that Zodiac used that ammo? Sandy was talking about buying a gun, or he was trying to obtain one. So you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's a knife crime. So I don't know. Yeah, it's the day before, but still, there's not enough and it's kind of far, Ned, to be honest with you. It's like we drove up there to where Vern's trailer was at. It's really not that close. You're driving through the mountain and it's a little rancher trail. It's way off the beaten path. You know what I mean? Especially back then. So it's like, then they drive down to the beach. I mean, you'd have better luck with George Gill. At least George Gill had the .22 rifle. At least he built the shack. At least you know what I mean? I think people would be pointing at the finger, not Sandy is the Zodiac, which is the conclusion that the internet jumps to. I don't get it,
Okay, so a lot of things to go through right there. Number one, I mean, yes, we are all in agreement that Sandy was a real person, but Ross had pointed out something very good. Sandy did not have the gun when he allegedly left J.C. Reed and Coleman. Now, he said that there's this possible story that he said he wanted to acquire one, but how do we know what Sandy said at all to J.C. Reed and James Coleman? Because, as he pointed out, it's all their testimony. And now, as I understand, they were interrogated separately by the police officers, and both of them were telling the exact same story. But, teenagers, more than anyone, will try to get their story right. Okay, here's what we got to say. Right now, you and me, Sandy did everything. We just took the money, and we didn't know he was going to do that. We left Sandy because he was crazy. We didn't know he was going to murder the guy.
Yeah.
Who do you believe? And that's what's so frustrating about that crime.
I mean, the court threw the book at them. I mean, I think that's very telling. I mean, the cops from that area, Orange County, and then those guys were hanging out on the boardwalk in Santa Cruz. They're not totally amateur levels. I'm sure those guys had decent enough experience. So that whole crime spree, they meet Sandy on the boardwalk. They break into a YMCA, steal some sandwiches. They also rob a woman's house. Was it Betsy? So they break into her house and they steal some short money. So I mean, there definitely is an escalation to the crime spree, but again, there's not enough glue. It's just a nearby crime. And again, this was looked into by law enforcement. You know what I mean? They looked very closely at the sheriff trying to find Sandy, and I'll have a lot more on that in episode 4. But you guys can be the judge of whether or not they found him or not. But I think they were probably just, planning to rob Vern Charles Smith, and then probably did end up stabbing him in the back. So they went and faked their car stalled to get him to fill up their gas, and then when he was doing it, they jabbed him in the back. So
now, are there any other elements of that story that you would believe? Because as we've been saying, it's more or less that Sandy and J.C. Reed and James meet Vern at the restaurant, and they say that they need gas, and then they go to his trailer because he's going to fill a gas can for them. And the story is that out of nowhere, in an unprovoked incident, Vern is filling the gas can, and Sandy just pulls the knife and starts stabbing. Yeah. And they're like, "What are you doing? What's going on? And why did you do that?" And he just says, "I don't know."
Yeah, and for no reason. Yeah.
Okay, well, this guy's crazy. So they cheated him out of the money. They stole $360. They said they only found $60, gave Sandy the $20, and they dropped him off somewhere. Are there any other elements of that story that you believe? Because you've doubted it quite a bit, or you expressed some honest skepticism about it. But is there any other element of that story that you believe to be true?
That's probably how the murder did go down. We just have no idea if it was one of those two dudes, Coleman or Reed, that stabbed him, because we really have no idea, like I said before, if leaving the restaurant was Sandy's last thing with them. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was just standing there and they stabbed him, and then they really did rip him off the money because he definitely got dropped off at the motel. The motel people saw him. So, like I said, the truth is probably some amalgamation of that mess of that story that those two guys told. Yeah, but I mean, again, you still have got other suspects. You've got George Gill. He, I believe, had an inconclusive test on the lie detector, but he had an alibi that he had stolen some guns and he was up north in I think Santa Ana, Sacramento. I forgot where he was, but they were semi-able to verify that. Then there's Robert Lee Bell, and another kid who apparently knew Domingos. And again, they all got cleared. At least like the main suspects that they looked at that they thought would have something good to it. Essentially, all got cleared. And then after the Zodiac activity, like I was saying, they all start talking about Baker, Weber, all the sheriff. I can't remember, Carpenter. They all start talking about how there's a strong link between Zodiac and Gaviota 63, or Berryessa and Gaviota. So.
Okay, and Ross, now I would like to turn it over to you. Would you like to talk about one of the other unconfirmed cases? Would you like to move on to the Zodiac in 68 and 69?
I'm fine to do the Swindles real quick because they did test ballistics versus 63 and 64. But before we get there, I just want to do one more thing. So 75 yards up from the canyon, the creek, blood was found, seemingly confirming that the assailant left injured. So you know what I mean. I think if Bobby did punch him in the face a couple times, he had his knuckle pushed in or the bruises. That he definitely wounded the killer. And also it shows why there's so much ferocity. You know what I mean? It's the standing over. It's all of those shots with the up close point blank shots, leaving burn marks on the body, and then he stood over the body and reloaded. He was angry because he got punched in his face and almost lost control when he was armed and they weren't. You know what I mean? It's also why Zodiac never claims it, in my opinion.
You mean the whole idea of the reason why he was trying to move the bodies and burn the shack, allegedly, is all because he was covering up his failure.
Yep.
And that's why he never mentioned it in the letters, because he viewed it as a failure. And Michael Cole talks about this in his books, particularly Volume 3 of Michael Cole's trilogy, when he says that Zodiac probably thought about this over and over and over again, this is how I'm going to do it. And then all the planning didn't help too much in the face of
all wrong. Went all wrong. You know what I mean? So yeah, 100%. And that like Ned was saying, covering up the failure, and also out of anger, he's still mad at them after he dumped all the, so he's trying to do something more. And of course he like we were saying, he changes that in the canonicals because you have mistakes there. Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs. So he's, you know what I mean? I'm definitely going to send you my boy Dion's essay because he covers it really well, at least from the canonical part. I mean, he doesn't take the pre-crimes into effect. But again, the Swindles, I have that one rated highly too because it has all those trademarks of the Zodiac crime. Water sacrifice, a coastline just like Gaviota, a town with water in it, Ocean Beach, Oceanside, Ocean Beach, and Santa Barbara, but it is a coastline, right? So, or Gaviota Beach, if that's what we call it. But even though it's technically not Gaviota Beach, but yeah, I think the Swindles is crazy because it's a super brazen. It's almost like a combination between Davis and 63. It's a super brazen, not coastline attack, but waterfront attack. Because it's like a little touristy town. There's a lot of little houses and cottages clustered on the side right there. So to go up and do that to someone at night right there, you know what I mean, is way more brazen than Gaviota Beach. Like I said, that's in the middle of nowhere. You can do whatever you want. Davis and Swindles are in kind of almost downtown urban areas, if you will.
And what do you think would be the exact ways in which the crime was committed that would stand out as Zodiac related? Because of course, looking at the geography of the land is one thing, but the Swindle Murders does have something a little bit different. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the killer starts shooting from a distance and then kind of eases up onto the victims.
Yep.
Whereas with Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs and the Stein murder, that is quite different.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, in my opinion, he changed his MO later on because he took too much risk in the early ones, you know what I mean, until he got super crazy brazen with Paul Stein. But we didn't mention one more thing about Gaviota Beach. The ammunition was able to be untraced from the local Santa Barbara ammo shop as well as Vandenberg Air Force Base due to the lot number. But it was 22 long Winchester Super X ammunition, which Zodiac loves so much that he writes about it in his list, you know, later on after the first canonical crime. And again, people write that off as it's just the same, you know, it's just the most common ammunition brand of the time, which, okay, sure. Even a lot of people, like experts say, like an expert killer would never really use 22 because it's so small and weak. You know, you have to shoot, like, look at how many times Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards got shot, you know, and like even with the 9mm, he still didn't kill Majot, you know what I'm saying? But Davis, Swindles, and Gaviota, those are all 22 long. So, you know what I mean? And then the ballistics not matching between 63 and 64 just means it's two different 22 long firearms. And then we see Zodiac changing weapons later on in the canonicals. So I think it fits. But you know, there's usually the holiday connection. There's usually, you know, the water connection. There's not really any holiday for the Swindles. People say Valentine's Day. But, you know, there's quite a few hallmarks there. And then there's some stuff missing from the Swindles. So if you want to say, like, taking the trophies, like Paul Stein's wallet and his keys or whatever, you know what I mean? Or necklace.
Now, how likely do you think the Swindle murders were the Zodiac based on our percentage scale? You can do like the 1 out of 10 or the percentage number. What would you give that?
I think I was like 90 or something. For some reason, I got stuck on that one. I could be way off, but I felt like that Davis and 63 were the highest. Obviously, Riverside was rather low in my opinion.
But so we said, would you just say 85% for the Davis murder, and what would you give Domingos-Edwards?
90 plus, so like a 95, just because, like, okay, so all those statements that all the officers make, that his direct quote is things that I'm not at liberty to discuss now. I think there's a strong link between Gaviota and the canonical Zodiac crimes for other things that I am not at liberty to discuss here. That's what the sheriff said. And then if you want to quote like J.B. Averett and some of the, he's law enforcement, he's seeing the evidence. Can't get him to tell me what it is, but you know what I mean? If you think about the footprints at Lake Berryessa, they got footprints at Gaviota. It could match that. They also have the rope bindings. So when we cover the canonicals, so the pieces of fingerprints that they got matched Lake Herman Road to, I think, was it Berryessa and Paul Stein? Not enough to identify a suspect, but enough to link those. So if they got fingerprint pieces at Gaviota, I don't know if they were able to connect that. See, they never announced all their Gaviota evidence. No one ever says that. They all just say, well, he touched the bodies, and I don't think that one was Zodiac. But when law enforcement makes a big deal, like, there's a reason why they don't want to announce what that is. And it's either because it's like a direct link to the canonicals or close enough, you know, in their opinion, close enough. So.
Okay, now we've gone up to the Swindle murders in 1964, and which one would you like to talk about next?
It's up to you, man. You can take us to the canonicals if you want. Like, I think so. A good segue might be the fact that what we mentioned about the ammunition, he likes it so much he carries it through all of the non-canonicals, and he brings it up to Lake Herman Road, where he writes that letter specifically saying, you know, things that only myself and law enforcement know. The ammo type was Super X, Winchester Super X ammo. That's the boxes they found it at Gaviota. And then also Davis and the Swindles are both shot with 22 long. So I don't know. I don't know what that means.
The Zodiac of the late 1960s will do something completely different, and he'll start carrying different firearms to pretty much all of the crime scenes, because the Blue Rock Spring shooting was committed with the 9mm Luger, and it's possible that the Zodiac was carrying a 45 caliber firearm at Lake Berryessa, and he didn't fire it, but Brian Hartnell was given pictures of guns. Which one did it look like? And he said it was the 45. Now that's completely different. He's bringing like a different type of gun to every crime scene then at that point. So how does that tie into your theory?
Well, the different calibers. Well, for one, he has to do that if he doesn't want to get caught. That's kind of common sense. I guarantee if like professional killers for the mafia or whatever don't show up with the same firearm every time, that'd be ridiculous. Like hitmen, that'd be ridiculous. So for what he considers his profession that he's supposedly so good at, except he keeps making mistakes, that's what he should be doing anyway. Although I still think he did that. The non-canonicals, just not different calibers. He just used different 22 long, so they couldn't trace it.
Yes, using different guns, of course, but
Yeah.
But you seem to show that his favorite caliber was 22 long, and why wouldn't he just do that again? Like just get different 22 caliber firearms if that's has some meaning to him. Why does he have to use a different caliber every time? Is it just because he owned more than one type of gun, or what?
Well, yeah, according to himself, he was ordering them all through the mail, and then he bought other ones that, or what did he say, a gun show? I forget exactly what he said. He bought it out of state. So, yeah, I mean, again, I only take what he says in the letters so much. Like, if we have stuff that can back it up, I'm like, cool, but also he makes up a lot of stuff and just says ridiculous bullcrap because it's, the Zodiac is ridiculous. So, sure, like he owns all the. Why does he keep using the 22 long in the beginning? Probably because he's a hunter. Most of those locations, like I guess maybe Berryessa as well, are hunting locations. So and even Lake Herman Road, I assume definitely is because it's definitely a fishing location. So they're almost all hunting or fishing locations. I think he probably was using the 22 long in the beginning because he's it's the cheapest ammo. He's probably a hunter because they consider it like a small game weapon. So people use it for like rabbit hunting, hunting small game and things of that nature.
All right, now we've talked a little bit about the Lake Herman Road murders, but would you like to share some things about this next Zodiac crime, the Blue Rock Springs shooting?
Yeah, so that one is like interesting because he upgrades to the 9mm. I think it's a whole weird night with the whole like Darlene story because people like go crazy making up backstories for or origin stories, and it's like who knows what to make of any of that. That's probably the most peculiar one. And as far as people saying like she's the real target, and they say the same thing about Paul Stein, I think Ned's covered this. I don't think there's any way for us to know who the real target was, not from what we have, So he changes to that 9mm. Of course, Mike Mageau is dressed weird. It's a much more weirder crime scene where the Lake Herman Road is a more straightforward one. You got the Boy Scout, the Eagle Scout. They clearly got ambushed, other than her running away and like some of the sloppy mistakes and the weird layouts of how the shells are found, the ballistics. It's more of like a straightforward crime scene because you have the people driving by, before and after. So they supposedly saw the car. So that like he ran up on him, he shot, he ran away real quick. Unless you believe the story of the dude who got chased in the car, Crow. Then it makes it a little weirder. But Blue Rock Springs, yeah, he obviously just runs up on them at the Lover's Lane on July 4th, again with the fireworks to cover up the shots. Still doesn't kill the male, even with the 9mm. And then there's all the weird stuff that happened that day, Darlene's backstory. So it's definitely interesting.
Well, absolutely, though. And that's what I would like to ask you about, because you mentioned Arthur Lee Allen at the beginning. And some people, perhaps they're getting this stuff a little bit from Graysmith and a little bit from Pam Huckabee, Darlene's sister, is that Arthur Lee Allen knew Darlene previously. And other people like to zone in on a different suspect, Richard Gaikowski, and state that Gaikowski knew Darlene and that he followed her and he murdered her. As you said, she was the only target. What do you think about Richard Gaikowski as a Zodiac suspect in these Darlene Ferrin connections?
I don't know. Like the only thing interesting about it is the New York thing, right? Because it's her husband or I don't know. Whatever the New York connection is with Gaikowski, it's probably the only interesting thing. But like as far as like Gaik being at the painting party or ALA being at the paint, I don't know. I don't think any of them were at the painting party. I probably didn't happen. It sounds like graysmithing, to quote Drew. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of weird stories going on there. I just don't know how to substantiate any of it.
What I believe you meant is that Darlene Ferrin was living in Albany, New York, and her husband at the time was working he's working in the same building as Richard Gaikowski. Gaikowski worked at the Knickerbocker News, and her husband for the Albany Times-Union, two newspapers right there. And I even said that was a coincidence that should not be ignored, fully investigated. But I mean, simply the fact that somebody knew one of the victims doesn't necessarily mean that they were the killer. Look how many people have this type of Darlene Ferrin connection. I just said Arthur Lee Allen, and allegedly Lawrence Kane and William Joseph Grant both went to Darlene Ferrin's restaurant and were harassing her. All these types of connections have been established. So which one do you go with?
Yeah, right. It's like a choose your own adventure thing with the Darlene origin stories. It's just like I don't know. It can't possibly be that many guys were going to the restaurant harassing her with way more witnesses. You know, it's obviously someone off the map. And then I don't know if Zodiac would be like sloppy enough to be publicly harassing someone like that. He seems like more of a loner. He seems like I don't even know, like, why would you bring Zodiac got away because he was off the map, you know what I'm saying? So why would you bring that heat down on yourself if you really had something to do with the crime or one of the victims? You'd be out there in the parking lot arguing with her where everybody could see you. You know, it just I don't know. If she is the real victim and the rest are cover-ups, then there's something I'm totally like missing about it. However, I don't totally discount the ABC murders that that Drew talks about that Cheney brought up, because I do think that could have some sort of play into it.
ABC murders? You mean the Agatha Christie one?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
So, like, in my opinion, like, Zodiac takes all these comic book and movie and literature references, then he blends it together with, like, predecessor crimes like Jack the Ripper, Texarkana. He blends all this stuff together in his own mind to create this new genre of my masterpiece that is, based on both reality and fiction. It's him wielding it together, that, his supervillain persona.
Well, I like to talk about the Zodiac Jack the Ripper connection as well as the Phantom Killer connection. Is there anything else you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Ned's work on the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Go check that out. Those are amazing episodes. Like, I pretty much learned that case from Ned. I didn't know anything about it. It's clearly like a hooded killer that's running up on these male-female couples in lover lanes. I mean, it's a lot more involved because of how brutal and crazy the guy is, way more out of control. But it's almost like the textbook blueprint for Zodiac. I mean, Zodiac gets all the shine because he wrote letters and got the front pages and got the book and the movie and all that stuff. But you could kind of clearly see that was his American blueprint. The guy had to have known true crime. He seems to have studied it. The Jack the Ripper letters, he takes the letter writing blueprint from Jack. I know people like to say now, well, most scholars agree that the letters are totally fabricated. And, like, again, I think that's another thing that's damn near impossible to substantiate. And I don't like the rabbit hole of all of the Jack letters are fake, so therefore all of the Zodiac letters are fake. And then any one of these killers who wrote a letter, no, man, they were just doing the crimes. They didn't write any of the letters. It spirals out of control. You know what I'm saying?
Well, absolutely. And let's be very clear. We are not even 100% certain that all of the Jack the Ripper letters are fake, even the ones that are highly discussed or entertained. I mean, It's still possible. For example, Jack the Ripper's first letter, the Dear Boss letter, disappeared from the archives, and it was returned in 1988 for the 100th anniversary. And by that point, they couldn't do any type of DNA testing on it because it had been contaminated so much. Passed around, yes. The From Hell letter no longer exists. And now, people can correct me if I'm wrong about this one. With the Saucy Jackie postcard, it was destroyed in the bombings in World War II. Please don't quote me on that. Correct me if I get that one wrong, but
that's crazy if so.
Are not. Like, how can you truly say that someone didn't write that? No DNA, no fingerprints, no side palm print testing, all of the stuff. Now we have our doubts, and there are reasons why people have their doubts, but that it's 100% a hoax.
Yeah, no, I disagree with the modern scholars. It's like, I guess there's the Ripperologists that know the case way more about me. I'm super casual on it. It's very interesting. But as far as the letters, like, I think it would be highly probable that he wrote the first few, like Ned was saying, like, definitely From Hell and Saucy Jack. Like, those seem to have a specific, cadence and personality to him, much like the early Zodiac letters. But let me turn the question around. I'm sure you've covered this on Black Box, Ned, but how far do you think Zodiac's, like, canonical, authentic letters go up to? Do you think it cuts off at a certain point? Because there's certainly some unauthenticated, weird copycats with Zodiac.
How long do I think the letters went on? Honest, boring answer, 1974. Now, was the 1978 letter authentic? Possibly, very possibly. I used to be like,
Yeah.
nope, absolutely not, nope. Then the
Hell yeah.
more I thought about it, the more I looked
Yep.
at it for all kinds of reasons, penmanship, motive.
Yep.
And Richard Grinnell points out the line spacing is very
Yep.
similar to another letter, and that the Zodiac wrote most likely.
Yeah.
Now,
100%.
and I've also pointed this out in other letters, whether it's 86 or 90, 2001, it sounds like stuff that the Zodiac Killer would say. But of course, I have my doubts. So as of now, I have to say the last letter was in 74.
Yeah, no, I mean it's safe territory. I mean, I'm kind of convinced it goes on even farther. Like I'm surprised Rich wasn't feeling like the Red Phantom letter, because again, it has that weird old Red Phantom movie that Tom posted. I hope it's still on Tom's YouTube. Like that, what we were talking about before, the film, literature, comic book villain. It's always like horror based, or it's always that kind of genre, Exorcist, etc. Red Phantom, and then Badlands. Not sure if
Movie connections, yes.
Yes. So, and then and not even mentioning Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, the Most Dangerous Game, the big ones that are seem like they're blueprint Zodiac,
Right, and that those letters don't even begin with "this is the Zodiac speaking." It's almost like the character morphed in some ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with the Exorcist letter, you said Red Phantom, Badlands, all movies.
Mm-hmm.
No Zodiac name.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, he carried that movie theme so long, and I don't know. It's like I don't know why. Like The Exorcist is weird because the best satirical comedy I've ever seen, and it's like the most Zodiac line ever. It's like, what are you talking about? I kind of get what he means when those movies are corny and you watch them as comedy, because I do that a lot with action movies and stuff. We actually review them on my channel, and if they're terrible, yeah, okay, we go there. But he's also trying to be oh, I'm so hardcore, the scary horror movie that scares everybody else doesn't scare me. And it's like, okay, Zodiac, you know what I mean? You ran out of multiple crime scenes, crap in your pants, probably got punched in your face. So the whole braggadocious bravado is kind of hilarious as he talks himself up, What about the Albany letter? Do you think that would play into Gaik, or is it Albany or Rochester?
Yes, Albany, the Albany letter. Yeah. I've been very clear that I don't think that Gaik was the Zodiac Killer, although I did give him a 6 out of 10, 60% likelihood.
Yeah.
And I'm just, to me, that's a giant question mark. I honestly don't know. And if Gaik were the Zodiac, okay, I could comprehend the narrative, but I look at other markers against Gaik, particularly for some profiling reasons. Richard Gaikowski was a homosexual, he was a schizophrenic and a heavy drug user, and I don't think the Zodiac was any of those things. I think the Zodiac was a heterosexual male, far out and deranged, mentally ill, but maybe not schizophrenic, and I think that the Zodiac was mostly level-headed and clear-headed when he did a lot of his activities, and not a regular drug user. That's just my thoughts on the subject, but that's why I don't think Gaik was the Zodiac.
Yeah, it's solid. I mean, Gaik's whole counterculture thing, I don't really picture Zodiac being a counterculture guy. That's why some of those law enforcement comments are interesting at the time, because the one guy I think says he thought he was taking speed while he was, or one of those drugs, he was taking something while writing the letters, so it would mask his handwriting, and it's I don't know about that one. And then another guy said he would pleasure himself while writing the letters as well, and it was just it was very interesting. I'll have to dig that one up, but yeah. So some of those police officers made some very interesting comments, and again, the self gratification and the stroking one's own ego, it kind of makes some sense. But some of those comments they made to the media are just how is this moving the needle forward on the case when we're thinking about what Zodiac was doing or wasn't doing while writing the letters? We need to look into a little bit more, substantial things. But let me turn it around on Ned. So, what are your thoughts on Lake Berryessa? Because, going back to Gaviota Beach, he approaches with the pre-cut rope. He has the gloves on. Those are all Berryessa parallels. And then, so like I was saying before, if he lost control or, either binded them and they broke off, or he wasn't able to bind them how he wanted to bind them, Lake Berryessa, a lot of people are all over the place on Lake Berryessa because of the mass. So just what are your general thoughts, and then the possible relation to 63?
I'm going to answer this question in a very twisted and roundabout way. Last night, I was doing a live stream here on BBOR every Thursday if people want to tune in, and somebody asked a question. What would it take for you to move a suspect up to a 9.5 or 95% level? Now, I'll answer that about the Gaviota shooting. What would it take for me to get that up to 95% or 99% likelihood? Was the killer at Gaviota Beach wearing a hooded costume or not? Did he have some big symbol on his chest or not? That is something that's missing, and that's a piece of info that I think there would be very little doubt if he wore a hooded costume and did all of those things. But I think we just simply don't have that information. And
well, real quick on that, I don't know about the logo, but I bet you he wore a hood, and even if it wasn't even like a hood mask, at the very least like a bandana, because it would be questionable to not do so, you know.
yes, I mean, some people do commit like attacks and sexual assaults in the daytime when they're not wearing a hooded costume, but it would be foolish not to in broad daylight. That's why we use the term. I mean,
Right.
what if one of the victims survives, he'd be recognized so easily. But people do take risks like that. Now, the theory that I have explored with Gaviota and the differences between Lake Berryessa and Gaviota is it possible that Gaviota Beach was a sexual assault gone wrong? That because the swimsuit was cut, Robert Domingos was the first one tied up. The guy shows up with a gun. He instructs Linda Edwards to tie him up. And I mean, that's what I think a lot of people are in agreement with. And you know the case better than I do for this.
Just like Cecilia and Brian, though. That's like the text, same pattern.
But then he cuts the swimsuit because he's trying to open it up so he has access to her body to sexually assault her. And then Robert Domingos breaks free from the...
Real quick, we have no idea when that was cut, though. It could have either been before or after, you know. We have no idea. But likely, where you're going is the most likely scenario.
That's just like a hypothesis, right?
Sure, yeah.
Hypothesis, right? Robert Domingos breaks free from the restraints, runs over, just starts punching this guy because he's trying to, well, either sexually assault or rape his fiancée. And then they think that he's down. They start running. The guy is not subdued, obviously, because he grabs the gun. And that's when things go down. Now, that's another point that we're missing from Gaviota, because their bodies were dragged to the seaside shack, right? Robert Domingos was dragged on his stomach, but Linda Edwards was dragged to the shack on her back. So no physical evidence whatsoever to indicate when the swimsuit was cut. Somebody even asked me the question, what do you think about the idea of her being dragged to the seaside shack? And he just did something a little bit perverted, cut the swimsuit because he wanted to look at her. And I'm like, well, that's as good as any. I don't know.
It's still in play. Unfortunately, as Ned was saying, there's basically no data. So, you know.
So I've entertained that theory of it being a sexual assault that had gone wrong. At Lake Berryessa, absolutely not. That was not a sexual assault that went wrong.
Right.
The killer went there, I mean, mostly just to wear his hooded costume and to write the message on the car door. He didn't even make sure that the victims were dead. Both of them survived for a period of time, and Cecilia Shepard should have survived the stabbing. It's just there were some medical complications in the hospital. So really, this guy isn't even about murdering people. He's just about, well, being very chaotic and trying to get his Zodiac name in the papers and talking to people on the phone, because he makes the phone call after Lake Berryessa. And I mean, as I said,
also doesn't say he's the Zodiac. He just comes with the I'm an escaped convict. I'm an escaped prisoner from this super far away prison. You know, even the story is kind of like, what are you talking about, bro?
But like, what do you think that's about? Because I have my own theories on the dialogue at Lake Berryessa, but what do you think that's about?
The cover story? Well, like, in my opinion, he's preparing for something that he didn't prepare for last time at Gaviota. He put them on high alert by trying to touch Linda, or as Ned just said, whatever happened, it doesn't really matter for sake of my argument right here. So the next time he comes, like, I'm going to control the situation much more. I'm going to tell them I just want their money and rob them to keep their guard down until I have them secured how I want them, have full control, because once they're both binded, then he's got full control of the situation. He never had that at Gaviota because he ran up them on fast. I think he got excited. You know, if he was the sniper who was shooting at people before that, he was building up his ego to kill someone. He runs up on Robert and Linda, and he gets excited that, he's the spider and the flies fell into his trap. But then he acts a little too soon and loses control, like Ned just said. Whereas at Gaviota, he comes with this, like, weird, crazy cover story. He has way more dialogue with him than he should. I mean, it's pretty hard to explain. I'm sure Ned will admit this is Lake Berryessa is by far the most baffling canonical. As weird as leaving Majot alive at Blue Rock Springs is, and sloppy as that is, this is way crazier, but there's all this other stuff going on now. The Manson family murders, Tate LaBianca stole his headlines, so he starts writing about blue meanies in his letters, and then he needs to do a knife crime to get on there. But like Ned said, he doesn't even go for the kills despite stabbing them that many times. He runs away super fast to write the note on the door. And that's kind of where we're left. We don't have any more information than that, other than the footprints. I would like to know if those footprints match anything at Gaviota. Say they have the shoe size. They've never announced it.
That would be another thing that would push it up, much higher on the list, like 10.5s and 10.5 size shoe.
Would Wing Walkers be a dead ringer for you, or would you just be like, it's close enough, but it's not perfect?
Oh, absolutely close enough, but not perfect. I don't know about dead ringer. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you have something like Wing Walkers and DNA evidence, that would be the dead ringer for me. But I would like to ask you,
Wing Walkers.
Do you believe that the Lake Berryessa stabbing was influenced by the Manson family? Because you just brought it up, and a lot of people bring this to my attention by saying that the Tate LaBianca murders occurred in August of 1969, right after the Zodiac debuts his name. He mentions his name in the August 4th, 1969 letter, and then you have August 8th and 9th with the Tate LaBianca murders. And then they're getting all the headlines in California. Actress Sharon Tate and 4 others have been murdered. Now, we didn't know all about Charles Manson and everything to do with him yet. But so you're in that book that he was like, I got to think of something to take over the Bay Area headlines or to 100% this wild story.
Yeah, 100%, because that crime was so crazy and out of control, and the blood spatters on the, written on the walls. So that's like why he comes with like that kind of Zodiac graffiti on Hartnell's door. But it was Hewitt telling me about when he quoted blue meanies in the letters and started using the Beatles slang. That's what sealed it for me, because now you have all those kind of roundabout allusions to Tate LaBianca and Manson, the stabbing crime, and then he's all of a sudden he's quoting Beatles, So.
Sure, fair enough. Now, we've talked about everything up to Lake Berryessa. Then the Zodiac has his final crime, the Stein murder, in October of 1969. What are your thoughts on that?
I was just going to ask you, but before we go, the Black Executioner hood, like, I'm sure you've covered it on Black Box Radio, but just tell us again for like us, like, where do you get off on that one? Because like a lot of people say that, like, because he wore that, then it could be a copycat, which I don't think it is. But you also have the lurker that watches the college girls. What do you think the deal with the getup is? Because he's got the crosshair on his chest, and I don't know if it's literally just Coco from the Mikado. I don't know. There might be something missing there, So.
Well, I believe you're referring to the idea that the Zodiac put an enormous amount of thought and planning into Lake Berryessa, and he only did it because it had meaning to him. Number one, I don't believe he wanted the victims to survive to tell the story of the costume. People ask me that all the time.
I agree.
Number two, did it have a specific meaning to him? Maybe. But again, I have this very boring answer of, I think that the hood already existed. And the reason why is because over the years, people have been sending me so many similar things to the Lake Berryessa costume. Welders wear a similar hood, and they did back in the 1960s. Of course, things have changed now. Firefighters even wore something a little bit similar. And the absolute closest example that I found looking like the Lake Berryessa was the Spanish capirote hood that is worn for religious festivals in Spain, particularly Holy Week. And I posted those photos on Black Box Online Radio last spring. So that would have just been like, just put on the clip-on sunglasses and just sew something on over whatever was in the middle. Maybe if it's the firefighter's hood, maybe it's a brand name or something. If it's the capirote, it would have been a badge or something like that. That's why it was sewn on, because he's covering up a previously existing symbol, and maybe he couldn't remove it without damaging the hood. So he's like, I'm just going to sew that on. And I mean, that's just what I think. Do I have anything other than just looking at how there are lots of hoods that fit that description? But also, final one. I do not agree with Jared Kobeck when he says that was a Renaissance fair costume and it's easily modified, because I just think that would be the most boring Renaissance fair costume in the world. You're going to be walking around with these women with all their little frills and their little flowery tassels and such, and you're going to show up like that with the Zodiac at Lake Berryessa. All I want your money. Like, dude, get out. You're just like bothering people. And Kobeck was like, it's an executioner's thing, a medieval executioner.
Yeah.
I just don't think so. And
Yeah.
I think you guys can get why.
Yeah, so if that's man, what doer, then yeah, I'm not feeling that suspect at all. What was I gonna say? So there is that one story of the people doing the Mikado in San Francisco, and they said like the dude showed up in like a leather mask one time and freaked everybody out, and like kept going to the shows. I always wondered if that could be the Zodiac. That'd be interesting. Like he made his own kind of like Mikado, but who knows? That could have just been a random Mikado fanboy for all we know.
But let's discredit that though for a second, because it's entirely possible that he was trying to recreate the Lord High Executioner from the Mikado. I mean, in an unsolved case, that's a reasonable possibility.
Yeah,
because the Zodiac goes on to say all of this Mikado stuff later on.
Yeah. No, 100%. But I just don't think that was the only reason. Like Ned said, I think it's like he always, he thinks he's this multi-purpose genius in his own mind, right? So he lines up everything perfectly celestially, and everything has a code and a cipher and a pattern, a parallel within an enigma. And so it's the Coco thing, but it's also like not to show his face in the daylight, and and then obviously some meaning to him, like Ned was saying. But there's also the Australian, SWAT guys. Tom posted that one. It's quite similar. And then there's the Church of Satan. They kind of have those executioner hoods at their ritual. It looks very, very similar to me. But how about him making the whole costume from scratch, Ned himself, like not like taking off something else like you were saying, but like totally sewing everything, he totally created it.
Then I would think that it had meaning to him, and it was purely done for a personal meaning, because
absolutely,
it was made from scratch. There is no way that someone with as little experience killing people as the Zodiac did knew that the victims were going to survive. When I was listening to Zodiac Speaking, hosted by Mike Morford and Richard Grinnell, they just said that Brian Hartnell survived by a millimeter.
Yeah.
Like if the knife had gone a millimeter to the other direction, he would have died.
To his heart,
I don't see how an amateur, like, I don't believe the Zodiac was a doctor, even if he was stabbing somebody in the back.
No.
He didn't know that the victims were going to survive. If it was made from scratch, then yes. I mean, it had meaning.
So I got something on that. The Vern Smith knife was very, very small. I think it was only an inch and a quarter. It was a very small pocket knife. When they stabbed him in the back, it created a 3/4 of an inch laceration in the aorta. And that was his cause of death. So you got to think of just that teeny tiny knife hitting the perfect spot in someone's back versus what Ned just said, which is Zodiac's massive Rambo hunting knife stabbing Brian repeatedly and still not hitting the spot. It's very.
I know that about the Vern Smith stabbing, that it was an inch and a half.
Yeah, the knife was very small. It was a very small pocket knife, and the laceration it made in his aorta was even smaller than an inch. You know what I mean? So it just hit him directly in the spot that would kill him. Whereas
I had a knife like that in the Cub Scouts about that size, and I mean, just the thought of stabbing someone with that would never even cross my mind. It's just such a puny little knife. I mean,
it just hit the perfect spot, like Ned was just saying. Versus Brian, a much bigger blade, stabbed way more times and missed and it didn't bleed out and bleed to death. So I totally agree with Ned. Like, obviously he wasn't counting on like Mike living at Blue Rock Springs, but now he wore this ridiculous costume to do this self ritual for himself. And now everybody knows about it because she lived long enough to give his description without the mask. And then Brian had that whole conversation with him and everything he said. But like we said, that one is the most, even though people go crazy with Darlene Ferrin, that one is the most rabbit holy just because of the costume and not saying he was the Zodiac and then writing on the door. It's just all very crazy. But yeah, Paul Stein is definitely super interesting too.
Sure. And what really are your thoughts on the Stein murder? Because the Zodiac has stabbed 2 people wearing the costume. 2 weeks later, roughly, he murders a taxi driver and just fires a single gunshot to the side of the head by the right ear.
Yep.
And he walks away. In a populated area, witnessed by multiple people, and that's why we have the composite sketches of the Zodiac. Those came from the Robbins kids, but he's also witnessed by Falcons, Helms, and who knows who else? People looking out the windows, like the one boy who thought he saw Xenophon Anthony and such.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the Stein murder?
Well, it's so brazen because it's downtown. So I actually have been to the Washington and Cherry, and I have a little break, like a mini Zodiac Files episode on my Instagram. You guys could check out should you care to. I went up there last October. When you get up there and you see how big those houses are in Presidio's Heights, it's like damn, because it's a super affluent neighborhood. You know what I mean? So not that quite a similar parallel to Ray Davis, because again, that was a very affluent neighborhood at the time. It was between the former mayor's house and the current mayor's house is where Davis found. So some sort of anarchist political statement there, possibly. But again, with Stein, you have a taxi driver once again, and it comes from Mason and Geary, which I'm pretty sure is damn near the theater district. So I would wonder if Zodiac came from the Mikado. He was all hyped up from his seeing his boy Coco, the executioner, the high executioner, and then he wants to do his thing, as he tells us 500 million times in his letters. So I don't know. As far as people saying like Stein, or they knew each other, like, so Stein lets him sit in the front and all that stuff, I think people like go a little bit crazy with the details. Again, I don't know if that's something we can substantiate or not. What's interesting is how the fare goes to Washington and Maple, the street down, but for some reason keeps going. And then Rich Grinnell of Zodiac Speaking and ZodiacCiphers.com, he gave me that tidbit about the contusions on Stein's like chest. So I really gotta wonder if he pulled the gun on him at Washington and Maple, and then he hit the brake and tried to get him to drop the gun, and then he hit his chest on the wheel, or something happened there. We have no idea what, but I kind of wonder how they got from Maple to Cherry, even though it's only one block. I don't think it was like he just had the gun on him and was like, you're gonna drive up, because people say like maybe a person walked by, like someone was walking their dog, so like he just has the gun on him. He's like, you're gonna drive up one more block. Once he pulled the gun on him, something probably happened. That's what I think. I think something probably happened. Could have even maybe went wrong there again for another one of his many mistakes.
Now, I want you to use a little bit of guesswork here. And what do you think about the theory that Paul Stein was shot, but because he was driving the taxi, it wasn't completely in park yet, or in a gear that would have stabilized the car. So the reason why the Zodiac is moving Paul Stein's body in such an awkward way is, at first, he was just trying to get the car to come to a stationary position so it's not like moving around. And Paul Stein kind of falls over on his lap a little bit. So then he's just like, kind of looks down at the shirt and be like, you know what? Just going to cut off the shirt. He kind of makes an incision with a knife, I think, and then tears it. And that's why it has such like a neat rectangle. Then he uses that to wipe down the taxi. And then he would ultimately send the pieces of the shirt in with multiple letters. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. Something happened there. I think that's definitely plausible. It's it does get a little bit hairier with that recent reveal of like Robin saying that like those were his fingerprints or whatever, because he went down and tried to pick up Paul Stein. Like, my only common sense thing about that is like, even if you're a young teenage kid and you walk up to someone lying on the ground with their head blown off, you aren't going to try to say like, hey, excuse me, sir, can I help you? Like, you're instantly just going to grab him and try to move him if you don't know what the situation is. And then I'm pretty sure as you looked at that stuff, you would start to understand the gunshot, probably with the amount of blood in the car wells there. So like, yeah, it's crazy how he cuts off his shirt and then sends in those pieces with the letters. And then Ned, you've heard this theory that a piece of the shirt came with like another one of the letters, and they've never announced it. Have you come across that one?
You mean other than the letters that we have like known for certain? No, I'm not familiar with that story that Paul Stein's shirt was in another letter.
Yeah,
I heard that there was a missing segment of Paul Stein's shirt based on the amount that he cut versus what was mailed in the letters. There is a swatch of the shirt that was never accounted for. What any other info you can share about that?
I don't want to miff it too badly because I'm not sure if it's just a complete rumor. You know how people get with these things. But so it came with what, the Halloween card, and then what? We'd have to say. So which ones are the known ones? The pieces of his shirt with the known.
Well, the other one would be the Melvin Belli letter on December 20th of 1969, the one that has the very neat handwriting.
Yeah, and then the first one was the Halloween card, right?
No, not in the Halloween card. The first one is the one where he says, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver" on Washington and Maple. We kind of call it the Stein letter, and says, "I also did in those kids in the North Bay area," but it says, "I am the murderer of the taxi driver. To prove it, here's a piece of his bloody shirt," and
Yeah. I think the rumor might have been that it was the Halloween car. We don't got to spend much time on it. I don't know if I missed it. But people always make such a big deal about him not taking credit for Berryessa, and he said, I did in the kids in the North Bay area, even though it's kind of vague. He still took credit for it, you know?
But my interpretation of that was that the Zodiac knew that the victims survived. Already they've told the story of the costume. He wrote the message on the car door, which I think was the real substitution for a letter.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
he's
Exactly.
already written something out, so he doesn't have to write it in a letter. What else would he say? Like, I mean, they already have the crime scene, and he made the phone call. So by October of 1969, he knew that all of law enforcement believed, as well as the media, that he committed that crime. So that's what I think why there wasn't more talk of Lake Berryessa in the letters.
I agree 100%. And it was also, he expected to probably be the most publicized for after Manson and the brutal knife stabbing. Plus, like, I'm pretty sure things like that were not going on around Napa, or at least Lake Berryessa at that time. It's my understanding there had only been, like, I think a few crimes in the area, at least nothing to the extent of the brutality of that. But back to Stein, what are your general thoughts on it? Because, I mean, it's kind of unlikely that, like they knew each other. I don't know why people automatically gravitate to that one, because, like, he's a taxi driver, you know? So it's like,
well, the theories that I've heard people share about that in the past, and I know you asked what I think, these are other people's theories, is that because he was a taxi driver, he's driving people to some type of possible illegal activity, and he saw something that he shouldn't have, and that's why he was targeted. What they would call bumping somebody off. He was bumped off because of information. I mean, I don't subscribe to that at all. Now, I honestly think that the Stein murder is just a very bizarre deviation. I don't have an exact answer as to why he would do that, other than the conventional narrative of everybody thinks he's going to go for a lover's lane in a secluded area, so now he's going to do something to confuse them. That's my honest take on the subject, other than the Jack the Ripper stuff. Because I've talked about this so much, I think the Zodiac was inspired by Jack the Ripper, that he's mimicking and recreating a lot of the Ripper crimes. That's why I think the piece of the bloody shirt was cut off to represent the cutting of Catherine Eddowes' kidney, which was mailed in with a letter, the From Hell letter. But somebody else also encouraged me to look at another thing, because he talks about Catherine Eddowes had her apron cut too, and that, like, maybe he was trying to recreate that and not the cutting of the kidney, or both of them at once. And I mean, I think that there are just so many hallmarks of Jack the Ripper in the Zodiac case. And Ross has been going at this for a while now, but what he's saying is that the Zodiac is acting like he's some type of brilliant mastermind, but he's not. He's just stealing from all kinds of people. And it's not only the serial killers. Think about everything we said about the comic books or about movies. You brought up Charlie Chan at Treasure Island with the Dr. Zodiac character. And even once he gets to 74, he's openly just talking about the movies. Exorcist, Red Phantom, Badlands, and so on. And
Man is the Most Dangerous Game.
Most Dangerous Game, perfect. All of that is just either stolen or paraphrased and twisted in some ways. And I did find that the film Bloodlust from 1961, which is a retelling of the Most Dangerous Game, also had a lot of Zodiac elements in it. And you have 4 people who are very young, and then there's another guy on the boat who gets marooned on the island, who is much older, and Paul Stein was older than the other victims by at least 7 years. He was 13 years older than Betty Lou Jensen, but Paul Stein was only 29 years old. So, I mean, I know that's not the best answer to what are your thoughts on the Stein murder, but I think he wanted to confuse people. I think he wanted to deviate from the pattern, even the way that Jack the Ripper and the Phantom Killer did. And I think that also he was trying to fuel his excitement, because he knew that he was taking a big risk. And it's possible that the Zodiac could have been apprehended if they had just said, white male in pursuit, be on the lookout for the white male on the All Points Bulletin, but they said Negro male adult, NMA. They were all looking for a black man. I mean...
That's the linchpin of the whole case right there. That's when it totally fell apart. Well, I don't know if it's graysmithing, but I bring this up a lot. Doesn't he say that Stein was held up by, like, 2 guys and robbed, like, shortly before? So again, I don't know if there's any credence to what that could be, or if he just totally made that up, or if it was another taxi driver. But I'm pretty sure he said it was Stein. Honestly, I'm pretty sure.
On what day? Like, when was he robbed?
I believe it was like, I don't know if it was like a week or 2 before, maybe it was a month or two. I believe it was shortly before. And again, not everything that guy said is credible. So again, I don't know if that one is realistic or not. But how about the fact that he let the last two males live? Michaud survived and Hartnell survived. So now everyone's talking crap about him, saying he only kills young women. And then Stein's brother, was it Stein's brother who threatened him? And that he's like, come get me or something. And then I can't even, wasn't Avery's brother, I think one of them made like a major like media statement, like talking hella crap about him. So people say, so, and was he in like Modesto or whatever? So people were saying like the Kathleen Johns thing was like a response to that threat, which again, I don't know. We haven't gotten to the post canonicals, but you know what I'm saying? He had to kill a solo man because everybody's saying he was weak.
Absolutely, I've heard that before. And that's not even a bad theory that people are saying that he's a lady killer. He's like, whoa, I don't want to be known like that. So he's going to murder a lone male, make it very obviously targeted a male. Now, we've talked about the Zodiac quite a bit, though. But at this point, though, Ross, I would like to also get into some of your observations about D.B. Cooper, because I know you follow that case closely, and you've put out a lot of material on your channel, Planet X Filmworks, about D.B. Cooper. But for this one, I am really not as up to date on D.B. Cooper as I am with the Zodiac. So a lot of it will be turning it over to you, and just you can give the introduction, and I will just ask some questions from time to time.
Yeah, so D.B. Cooper made my brain explode because those guys in the Vortex go super deep on aviation and aeronautics. And if then there's paramilitary like Drew's suspect, Ted Braden. So like, yeah, you could really go down these technical rabbit holes where these experts really know these parts of history and science and whatever else, aerospace. None of things that I'm very virtued on, but I do love the case. But I have had some amazing experts on my channel. Check out the Cooper Chronicles series. We've had Eric Eulis, ericeulis.com. He runs CooperCon, so that's coming up in a few weeks here. So go check that out. You get to see all the experts speak. And then there's Tom Kay, of course, the scientist. If I'm not mistaken, he's a paleontologist, and he does like in-depth analysis on the rare earth metals particles that were found on the tie, which is probably like the craziest thing in the case. I'm sure Ned has queued it up for you guys before, but this is Thanksgiving Eve. It's another 70s crime, which is why it's hilarious when people try to conflate Cooper with Zodiac. Like, oh, I know who Cooper was. It was definitely the Zodiac, bro. It's like they didn't even remotely closely resemble each other. Cooper was probably like a tall, skinny guy in his 50s, possibly. But if you've seen the Unsolved Mysteries, like, yeah, it's the only unsolved American skyjacking in U.S. history up in the Pacific Northwest, and it comes out of Seattle to Portland, where Cooper jumps out with $200K cash ransom. And the dude was just super slick about it. He's like a James Bondian American folk hero. What I like about it is people really go like in depth on the jump experience. Was it a Ted Braden who literally had thousands of jumps and could do it in his sleep with his eyes closed, just like no problem? Or was it some guy who had literally never jumped and just gone to the library and read about it? Because, there actually were American skyjackers who did that. Martin McNally, I believe the podcast is it American Skyjacker? Something like that. That dude, he was a Cooper copycat, but he jumped with 500K, had never jumped in his life, and he survived and got caught. And then, of course, there's, McCoy and all the, there's several Cooper copycats after him, and people love to say, that one of those guys was definitely Cooper. It doesn't seem like he was, and that's because the Cooper money was never found back in rotation. So, like, it kind of seems like he didn't spend it. But it's super interesting. I would say behind Zodiac, like, Cooper's number 2. That is the Northwest American, kind of mystery.
Now, you've brought up several different D.B. Cooper suspects. And do you mind talking about some of them? Because you brought up Richard McCoy and said that he made the copycat skyjacking, which came a year later, right? But Richard McCoy is one of the most highly regarded D.B. Cooper suspects. Why is he not D.B. Cooper?
Looks nothing like him. None of the sketches look like McCoy. He has massive ears. McCoy doesn't have the skin piece flap of his tongue, so he spoke with a lisp. Cooper had no discernible accent. So McCoy was also from North Carolina, or he lived down south. So accent, lisp, McCoy's skyjacking was super sloppy. He put makeup on his face and he was sweating it out because he got nervous. He also left his skyjacking instructions in the lobby and they brought him out to him. If I'm not mistaken, he brought his own parachute and activated it and knocked out a stewardess. That is like the most un-Cooper crime. Cooper made basically no mistakes. He smoked butts. He spilled one glass of the bourbon they got him, and they cleaned that up for him. But other than that, like he had this bomb or fake bomb with him, whichever way you go on that, and he just sat there smoking butts, cool, calm, and collected. Made zero mistakes. When they brought him the bags, they didn't even bring the bags he asked for. They brought him like he wanted like knapsacks, and they brought him like open bank bags. So he just pulls out a pocket knife, cuts up the one of his dummy shoots, and then and stitches everything together right then and there without complaining. He's like, I mean, this is not what I asked for, but at the same time, he just adapts. And he's like, whatever, I'm about to jump out of this plane in the dark in a storm anyway with 200K, so it's not like anyone's ever going to see me again. Disappears into thin air. McCoy was bumbling, fumbling. Guy had not a clue. He ultimately gets shot by the FBI, and then that agent says, when I shot Richard McCoy, I killed D.B. Cooper. I'm surprised Ken Maines has Richard McCoy as his main suspect, to be honest with you, because with that guy's experience, I would expect more on that.
Now, you've also mentioned another D.B. Cooper suspect, and his name is Ted Braden. He's the subject of the book Paratrooper of Fortune by Drew Beeson. Yeah. And Drew and I have talked about the Zodiac a lot. He also has a book out on the Zodiac case, as well as I've also discussed D.B. Cooper with Drew. But what do you think about Ted B. Braden as a D.B. Cooper suspect?
Man, he's awesome. Like, his experience is so sick. I want to take Drew's book and direct the Ted B. Braden movie, because even if I put that last chapter in of the Norjack hiking and I get that wrong, the dude still has the most like crazy life. Like the way Drew is able to retell it, his career, and just like, I mean, when I read that book, I was sold on it being Braden just because his experience is so impressive, you know. But I mean, the more modern argument people are trying to make is like, you wouldn't really need that much crazy like halo jump experience as the you know, Braden's a master parachutist, but the guy's life from military contracting to possible CIA to Vietnam conflict is just, and I think even is in the Battle of the Bulge. He joins World War II, where I'm not even sure if he was of age. I'm pretty sure he just told them like, yeah, I'm 18, bro, and they signed him up and shipped him out. So it's just like he's a super soldier, like Drew says, you know. Definitely by far the most renowned and impressive suspect. But a lot of those Max dogs, like Drew says, they all say Braden. You know what I'm saying? Every one of those guys thinks it's Braden. So.
Yes, but I think I saw on your channel that you have a video out that discusses another D.B. Cooper suspect that's really come into a lot of discussions, and his name is Milton Vradenburg. Mm-hmm. Now, Milton Vradenburg has a lot of things that are going for him as a D.B. Cooper suspect, but a lot of counterpoints. And would you like to talk about him?
So, yeah, this was an epic reveal at CooperCon. You could actually check out the panel with Ryan and Nick. It's on Nikki B's channel, but go check that out. When they made that reveal, and so that all comes back to the tie particles, which are from this company Rem Crew Titanium. That's essentially where Eric and Tom K has the high resolution microscope. So that's what they scan it on, and that all comes back to that. And then so Eric's new suspect, Vince Peterson, he's kind of this pretty tall dude, I think 6'1" or 6'2", and then Milton Vradenburg. Those guys were in the same lab group of this company, Rem Crew Titanium. So he's the scientist. There's a lot of good stuff for him. It seems to fit. I mean, it all depends on how much stock you put in the particles. Like, you know, for those guys, don't get me wrong, their argument makes a lot of sense. And those guys are D.B. Cooper experts. Eric, Ryan, Nikki, you know what I'm saying? I just kind of, you know, parrot what those guys say. But, you know what I mean? Do you think it was a guy that was like actually working in there mixing those chemicals, or could some other employee or contractor have managed to come in contact with that stuff? Because it's microscopic particles. You can't see it. You know what I mean? So it just depends if some guy walking by that lab with a tie on managed to get it on that. I mean, what people like to say is like, how do we know that's D.B. Cooper's tie, bro? He definitely got it at a thrift shop. And you know, kind of no one thinks that. That argument kind of makes no sense, because I think it's like a 62 or 63 tie. So it's clearly like a whatever 10-year-old tie or whatever. So it makes a lot more sense that the dude would have been wearing it. But that's what's so interesting. Before D.B. Cooper jumped, he took his tie off and put it on the thing. So no one knows if he meant to grab it, because he grabbed his attaché case, his bag, the shoe. He grabbed everything he brought. He even asked for the matches pack back from the stewardess. Like, he remembered to not leave anything. So we don't know if he forgot his tie, or did he leave it there as, like, you know, F you to the man, you know, he got away with the skyjacking, and it's like the, you know, the taking off of the working man, you know, symbol. So
But there are two responses to that. The first is, when I first learned about Milton Vradenburg as a D.B. Cooper suspect, of course I went to google.com and I just put in Milton Vradenburg, let's see what this guy's all about. And all of these things about titanium and metals came up, unrelated to D.B. Cooper, like his actual from his career. I was like, oh, wow, okay, this guy, you know, had a career and all. But like, was he 58 years old at the time of the skyjacking?
Ooh, we'd have to run that by Nikki, but I think, yeah, it's plausible.
Well, let's just say in that range, like upper 50s. I mean, when I read that, I was like,
yeah, see, I'm not sure about the upper 50s, but if I'm not misquoting Eric, I think one of the first statements, either from the, because Cooper, so here's who saw Cooper, the dude he bought his ticket from at the you know, gate, and then you know, the stewardess and the people on his plane, which, you know, there's like a bunch of regular people, and then there's the plane crew, and most of them saw him. But I think one of the first descriptions said like 50 or 50s. So I don't take what, you know, again, it's kind of like a Zodiac situation, except, you know, whereas they saw a dude from, like Ned was saying, 20 feet away in the dark on a street through the secondary window. These people were on a plane for basically not a long flight, but yeah, a few hours. They were on this flight with Cooper. You know, Tina was sitting right next to him the whole time. There was a bunch of, even though he didn't stand out, he sat in the back, he had on sunglasses. So people thought he was like an executive or a you know, a plane company executive. So, because they were like, they're catering to him, they're giving this special treatment. But he was so chill, no one knew they were being skyjacked, none of the regular people. So, like Ned was just saying, what does that tell you about Composite Sketch? You have a whole flight of people that saw the skyjacker, and even still you got these weird inaccurate composite sketches that could never pin the dude. So what does that say for Zodiac? Obviously the composites are way off and complete garbage, because he was seen, you know, running away, you know. So
but now wait a second, if we're going to talk about how there are possible sightings of DB Cooper, or like the witnesses are giving their statement that DB Cooper might be in his 50s. There's another very famous D.B. Cooper suspect named Robert Rackstraw, who is the suspect of the previously mentioned case breakers. And as I understand, he was not even 30 years old at the time of the skyjacking.
28. Yeah, I think it was 28.
How does that tie in?
Rackstraw is cool. He's an interesting guy with like the CIA, Vietnam, like contracting stuff. He's more of like in the, you know, military Braden camp. But again, just going back to the case breakers thing, I mean, I think the best thing for everyone to do is go watch that DB Cooper Where Are You series on Netflix. It has Eric and it has Bruce, who wrote DB Cooper and the FBI. Definitely pick that up if you get that. That's like, they call it the DB Cooper Bible. It's amazing. Bruce is the man. They have the case breakers in that documentary, and they go down there and like hassle Rackstraw like on camera. Actually, it's hilarious. He was in San Diego. I wish I would have known that back then, bro, because I would have totally been like, hey, these guys got to leave you alone, bro. But so he was down here in San Diego, and like he lived on the boat or the marina or whatever, and like people went down there and talked to him a few times, and you know, so it's just kind of funny, the interaction of I know we got to keep it serious, but when the case breakers went down there, they were like hassling him, and he was just like, I'm not DB Cooper, like leave me alone, like get away from here, and come on, man, you think that's DB Cooper, the guy that was on the documentary, you know what I mean? There's nothing to ever tie Rackstraw to it, you know, like, and he said he wasn't, so, you know.
Okay, then there's just one more suspect that I have to ask you about, and I've had Jeremy Berthium on the channel before. He's the author of the book So I See You Don't Paint Houses, and he has a Zodiac suspect named Richard Gaikowski, as well as many other people. Now, Jeremy's also appeared on the channel to talk about D.B. Cooper, and his suspect is Kenny Christensen. Again, it's not exclusively Jeremy's suspect. He has talked very clearly about how other people have Kenny Christensen as their D.B. Cooper suspect. What do you think about Christensen?
Yeah, so he's covered in depth in Skyjack, which is kind of like the first like prominent like DB Cooper book. And like, I don't know, like, you know, he supposedly has that mystery money, but well, here's the thing. Like, if you ask like Ryan and Nick or any of those Vortex guys like this question, they'll break him down for you like in less than a minute, because he worked on Northwest Orient. So it's very highly likely that crew could have possibly like known him. So if like that dude's sitting there with sunglasses on trying to blend in, are you really going to hijack the freaking, you know, flight company you work for? You know, it'd kind of be a ludicrous sentiment. So I know there was like a lot of major things that discounted him. It was like a while back since I read Skyjack, and then he comes up then. I mean, he kind of looks like the composite sketches. But again, I don't know. I don't really, I don't think there's really, that no one ever really had like a good motive for him, right? You know, other than like, yeah, I guess there was what do you call it, like firings and strikes or whatever. I think there was some corporate turmoil.
The airline.
Yeah, so I just don't know if that's enough to like push someone to be like, I'm gonna hijack my own airline, but I'm gonna wear sunglasses so no one's gonna recognize me. You know what I mean? I think he fell apart pretty quickly under scrutiny, but you know, he kind of does have to look right. Like I could say that much, but also I think wasn't it, at least in Skyjack, I think it was his brother who was like heavily pushing the theory. So I don't know. That was kind of weird, you know.
But some people who have even left comments on my few DB Cooper episodes here on BBO War said they are certain, they believe that DB Cooper did not survive the skyjacking, that he did not survive the parachute jump. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's highly unlikely. I like Eric's take on it. Definitely go check out Eric's YouTube as well, because he does awesome stuff on the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist and Cooper as well. But like nothing ever found. Well, we can't say nothing ever found because there's the Tina Bar money, which is like at 5,800 or whatever. So you have those little stacks of money in the river bed, creek, beach, whatever you want to call that. But other than that, nothing is ever found. I mean, I'm not like that familiar with Northwest. I've been there quite a few times, but to say like the parachute, which you think would be huge, all the money bags, his attaché case, the bomb briefcase, he jumped, and then a small paper bag. So he jumped with all this stuff. If he just first, the FBI was pushing that super hard, and that's why DB Cooper and the FBI is so good. How Bruce deconstructs their argument, because they were saying like, hey, this is the one that got away. It's a bad look for law enforcement. We're just going to tell everybody that he's splattered on the ground to try to deter other copycats or deter other skyjackers, right? Just to like get control the narrative, in other words, right? But that started falling apart super quickly when like quite literally nothing was ever found. I would expect to see something like the briefcase, or they wouldn't find his body or skeleton. They combed that whole area. Like they had he had what, I think a 72-hour head start. But after that, Himmelsbach was flying back and forth in his private plane. The FBI came down. Eventually they called it off because of weather conditions. But, other than the head start he had, they did have a pretty exhaustive search of the area. So, I mean, okay, they're 100% certain DB Cooper splattered into the ground, but no, they even found other bodies when they searched. There was some like missing girls. I think there was 2 or 3 missing girls. So they found unrelated crimes and other things of that nature. I think a small plane, Bruce says in the book. But, they find all this crazy stuff, but no Cooper body. You'd expect to find his body in the suit, or maybe attached to the parachute if you got stuck in the tree.
Yeah. Okay, and Ross, thank you so much. We are just about out of time, so I would like you to use this as an opportunity to give either any final notes and send off, or you can tell people how they can find your stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Just head over to youtube.com/PlanetXFilm. Subscribe. We do movie reviews, true crime, Zodiac, debates. My main series, The Zodiac Files, Episode 4, coming as soon as we can get it out. There's been a request for more Drew and more Black Box Net on the channel, so we do our best to accommodate that as well. I just like us to have, organic topics that we could all, really dive into. That's pretty much all we're pushing right now. As Ned said, you could get the comic book, the Dark Rift Volume 1, Escape from Earth. There's always so many things going on. It's tough to get a handle on all of it. But the main series coming soon. We're still doing the movie reviews. We got the Expendables 4 roast coming up on Sunday, or we're going to be doing another paranormal show. And we're just keeping the shows rolling. So get on the lookout for that.
Now, you did start the Zodiac Killer debate series. Was it called the Debate Files on your channel? Will you be doing?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the debates are 100% organic. That kind of was a situation that spiraled out of control, and those guys wanted to get on there and do that. So yeah, if anybody wants to come on and debate the topics, I don't know. Your boy Ray Grant had some smoke with me. I don't know what happened there. Apparently, his name got brought up on an episode. It was just Rich and I think Trucer that brought it up. I didn't even say the guy's name, but Ray Grant, I'm surprised you called me out with what Butterfield did to you on his website, because you got done up bad there. So I don't know if Ray wants to. I don't know why he would want to debate the series host, which is what I was, but Ray, you got to make it worth my while, buddy. So I'll send Ned my fee, and you can send it over. But yeah, we'll get some more debates going.
All right, Ross, thank you so much. And everybody, please feel free to go through some links in the description box here for Black Box Online Radio, and always tune in every Friday for an Anything Goes, where any subject is fair game. That will be all for me now, and until next time.